Hello, good morning. Good morning and welcome. Thank you all for coming. Very briefly, we've got a lot to get through. We've got 3 talks for you today. David, Eric, myself, Matthew. We're going to spend about 10 minutes each on our presentations. We're then going to go into a little panel discussion amongst ourselves because we think this is going to raise questions and that we can talk about. And then we'll have Q&As at the end for 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. So just before we launch into David's presentation, if you'll join in with me, please, we're just going to take 3 deep breaths to arrive in the room. So you don't have to join in, but if you want to, just sit comfortably in your chair, back upright, feet on the floor. You can close your eyes or not, and just take a deep breath in. And let that out. A deep breath in. Let that out. And a deep breath in. And let that out. Thank you. David, over to you.
Can you hear me? Excellent, excellent. So I'm Dr. David Unwin. I'm a GP from the north of England. I've helped look after 10,000 patients for 40 years, just north of Liverpool. And I'm going to tell you the difference that food has made to the patients I've cared for all these years. So if we just think about death for a minute, 2/3 of the people in this tent will die. We're all going to die, of course. We're all going to die. But 2/3 of the people in this tent will die of cancer, cardiovascular disease, or stroke. The great news is that your dietary choices make a difference to 2/3 of the deaths that actually occur. And that's what really focuses my mind, making a difference. I'm particularly fascinated by things like fatty liver and diabetes, but really it all comes back to mortality because, I'm not that fussed how I die, I'd just rather not yet. That's the idea. Okay, pressing on. So this is Josh, one of my patients who's consented to me telling his story. So there he is, he's only 25 years old and he weighs 25 stone. This is March of last year. Just think about life for Josh. He's only 25, but everything is an effort, everything. Life is really hard. But actually, unfortunately, Josh is young, but has type 2 diabetes. This is a completely new illness, young people with type 2 diabetes. It was unheard of when I trained at Liverpool University. It's a new epidemic coming for our children, type 2 diabetes. Here's Josh. Why does it matter? It matters because poorly controlled diabetes takes away 1/3 of your life expectancy. Most of you will know that diabetes is linked to heart disease and stroke, but what you won't know is that diabetes, and actually also just having a big belly, is linked to cancer. So that diabetes and a big belly is linked to 8 forms of cancer. So this is kind of the intro into, what you eat can make a difference. And it isn't just heart disease and strokes. It's much, much bigger than that. There are the references on that. So in my practice, we've had a 10-fold increase in my medical lifetime, the people with diabetes. It's gone up 10-fold. So this is not genetic. It can't be in 40 years. It's so serious. But we're talking hope here. We're talking hope. So there is Josh, March. There's his weight graph. Wait for it, drum roll. Come on. Look at that boy. Now look at that. Now that is why I'm a doctor, because that gives me joy. That boy now, look at his skin, it's shining. He's training for a half marathon. His dietary choices have changed and given him his life back. So he's down 10 stone in less than a year. And this isn't fat jabs. This is diet. And he's not hungry. He doesn't feel hungry because he's eating differently. That little miracle there, we've achieved that in our practice 151 times. 151 people who've put their diabetes into remission. Many of them have come off medication or not needed medication. And if you keep giving people the choice of, today, are you going to change your diet or shall I start lifelong medication? You start saving money. My practice has now saved £373,000 on the diabetes drugs budget alone. Because if patient after patient you say, do you want to learn how to look after yourself or shall I start drugs? Not one person has asked me for the drugs. Not one person in 12 years. Every one of them has taken the chance that I give them, and then we save money. Junk food. Nobody in this room believes in junk food, but here's a study. So that was 22,000 men and women looking at junk food. Individuals reporting the highest intake of ultra-processed food as opposed to the lowest experienced a 58% increased risk of cardiovascular disease, mortality, and a 26% increase in all-cause mortality. So the food you eat, the food you feed to your families makes a difference to lifestyle and mortality. Every meal is a choice. You're choosing your future. It's that serious. And that's why I wanted to work with farmers. I wanted to tell you that what you did and what you do is really, really important. You matter. So I've come from the world of medicine to say you absolutely matter. Junk food is costing the nation a vast amount of money. This is from the Guardian government figures. £92 billion is the cost per year, the health impact. But far bigger, 176 billion, is the lost productivity from sick people who are not working and not paying tax. So every single taxpayer in the UK is paying an extra £7,000 in tax because of the junk food that is being sold by the supermarkets. And it's kind of an evil because the costs of this junk food fall onto the public purse and the profits go back to the supermarkets. It's a terrible, evil system. And that's why I love Groundswell, because we're fighting back. Thousands of you are here fighting back. Thank you. Thank you. So this is the diet sheet. So my patients, I give them a diet sheet. I say, turn the white stuff green. Instead of your bread, have green veg. Instead of your rice, have green veg. And eat a lot more meat and protein and fish and cheese and full-fat dairy. So this is odd, isn't it? So you've got an NHS GP saying meat, fish, full-fat dairy, butter even, eggs, eat as many eggs as you like. And we've been doing that for 12 years. And when we started, there was trouble because people felt I was murdering my patients with whole foods. And so I took the precaution of collecting data from the very first day, baseline data and latest follow-up on all of the cardiovascular risk factors that we measure in the health service. So here we are. We've published in BMJ Nutrition with Professor Roy Taylor every single measure of cardiovascular risk has improved over years for my patients, every single measure, including cholesterol. Hemoglobin A1C is the sugariness of the blood, that's improved by a third. The weight down 12%, blood pressure improving significantly. 20% of all my patients who were on blood pressure medication come off it because the blood pressure improves so much if you eat a whole food diet and don't eat the junk. So this is regenerative medicine. Instead of using chemical inputs, I'm interested in the real problem for my patients, regenerative medicine. So, hunger. People eat because they're hungry on the whole. So, how about I have a healthy bowl of fruit and fiber with some skimmed milk, no sugar. What happens to my blood sugar? It doubles. This is because I have type 2 diabetes. So that healthy whole grain stuff is not good for me. It's not good for me, but watch what happens next. So my blood sugar goes up, my insulin comes in late and heavy, and then my blood sugar drops into the low range. But that makes me hungry. So what's the answer to that? It's another bowl of healthy, whole grain, delicious breakfast. And round I went, getting fatter and bigger until I had diabetes. Eating sugary carbohydrates, getting hungry, going round and round, my tummy got bigger. And that was my problem. And now I've reversed my diabetes. I don't need medication because I eat whole foods, like on the diet sheet. So that's me eating 2 eggs and very thickly cut bacon, because I don't like bacon thin, I like it thickly cut. Look what happened to my blood sugar. What happened? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. So to somebody like me with type 2 diabetes, that's a great result. I can eat without putting my blood sugar up. There's a problem, though. There is a problem. The food that we are eating is becoming less nourishing because of farming practices. So this is data from 1914 to 2018. If you're looking at the average mineral content of calcium, magnesium, and iron in cabbage, lettuce, tomatoes, it's dropping. It's dropping because of farming practices. It's now actually impossible for older people to get enough dietary magnesium. You can't buy the food with the magnesium in it as you could. This is really bad, and it's up to you people to reverse this, because you have to be very clever now to really get a nutritionally dense diet. It's quite hard. So we have a world problem of obesity. That's the bigger problem. It isn't that people are starved. They are starved in a way because we're overfed but undernourished. So people are eating food and getting fatter and fatter, but they are lacking micronutrients and macronutrients. And this is all about eat less. We need to eat less. My patients eat a third less food than they did before. So when you're saying how do we produce food for the nation, actually, if you go low carb like my patients, they eat less. I eat a lot less, and I'm not hungry on the diet. The question is, how do we produce nutrient-dense food without chemical inputs in a sustainable way? And then we can link regenerative agriculture with regenerative medicine. And then we'd save loads of money, and you'd all pay less tax. Result. Final slide. There we are. That's Dave, and he's on his 60th birthday. You can see the balloon behind him. He's got central obesity and very poorly controlled type 2 diabetes. He weighs 118 kilos. He's a big lad. 16 weeks later, look at him now. Again, transformed. He's one of the 151 that I've done. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's the food you eat affects your health. Dietary choices become health choices. And if only the people who buy food would understand this, they would pay more, because the cost of food, cheap food is not cheap. If you pay with your health and you suffer for years and years and years, that was actually very expensive food. Thank you. Thank you very much. I've finished.
Good morning. My name is Eric Smith. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Audacious. We are an early stage technology company based in the Boston area. I'm going to continue the conversation from Dr. David Unwin about the nutritional quality of our food and how we can build frameworks and metrics and understand what is the relative quality of our food and what it does for our health. Put this in my pocket. I thought it was my cell phone. Okay, so fundamentally what we're working to do is connect the dots between agriculture and human health. Nutrition starts in the soil. Believe it or not, that nutrition is there, but it is no longer active and available to the plants that are there, nor to the animals, and what we put in that food is ultimately determining our health. So everything that I'm going to be talking about today is really in the context of how a for-profit company is looking to solve our very dated and antiquated system of how we transact on food. This has been the basis of how our food system has worked for the past 100 years. We take some type of varietal that has been bred for volume. We put that varietal into the soil. We manage that soil with chemical inputs. And then we expect magic to happen to continue to produce more and more volume of food as the basis of how we transact. The problem is, along the way, that we forgot that food is supposed to nourish us, and the primary outcome of our food system is supposed to be nutrition. So the question becomes, how do we measure nutrition? How do we measure the nutritional quality of our food? And how do we help all the farmers who are doing great work on the soil and in the land to get paid on the basis of the quality of their food? The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization put this image out about 7-8 years ago. And to me, it's incredible that this isn't common knowledge, that this isn't our framework for understanding how our system works. We're not cycling carbon, we're cycling nutrients. We are cycling carbon, we're cycling a lot of things, but the nutrition is ultimately what we're moving from beginning to end. Depending on how we treat that soil, the biology will become active, will make nutrition available to enter the plant through the rhizosphere. Those nutrients move up to create a healthy plant that is ultimately consumed by a human or consumed by an animal. As Dr. David Unwin said, we are overfed and undernourished. What that means is we're getting the wrong balance of macronutrients, we are getting inadequate levels of micronutrients, and completely deficient levels of phytonutrients. How did we get here? We do like to attribute to soil health, but we have to remember genetics play a very important role in this equation. The varietals that you choose and what you are choosing to optimize for in your production system are going to determine the nutritional quality, the outcome of your system. So genetic dilution is an important role here because as we design for bigger, prettier, shelf-stable varietals that last longer, that play to the quality metrics of the manufacturers, the CPGs, the food processors, we have put less nutrition in every gram of food. That is one reason why our food is nutritionally depleted today. The other reason is what we just talked about, soil health. And the third is the chemicals and the toxic inputs that we put in our system are actually inhibiting the uptake of those nutrients. There's great studies beginning to emerge about the impact of pesticides, the impact of synthetic fertilizers on distorting plant health, which is ultimately an expression of nutrition. I took an interesting journey to this point because I came from the environmental side of this equation. I really believed that the food system could hold the keys to climate change. There is no doubt that if we can activate the stewards of the land and reward and incentivize them for the great practices to put carbon back in the soil and mitigate the greenhouse gas intensity of their production systems, we could solve climate change. I full-heartedly believe that. The science says that we can take a big chunk out of the problem. Unfortunately, consumers are not spending dollars on environmental attributes. Consumers vote in their own self-interest. They care about what it does for me. What is the value attribute? What is the function of the thing that you are selling to me? If you can't tell a story about the quality of that product and what it does for me, my family, and my health, I'm not going to spend more money on it. And that's where we've lost this thread. We have to connect the dots between the quality of the food and the impact on the human. We have to start treating our food not as a commodity, but as a functional ingredient to health. So what is healthy food? Healthy food is both safe and nutritious. Today, food is neither. So my company is working to define, measure, and track nutrient density. Nutrient density was historically on the basis of how much nutrition was in the food per grams, calories. The framework that everyone likes to use is that watercress is more nutrient dense than a ribeye. It's not really true because of the volume of the food. However, that's how we've been talking about nutritional density. What we need to do is compare apples to apples, steak to steak, carrots to carrots, peas to peas. Only then will we have an objective benchmark for the relative concentration of health-promoting compounds within the food so that we can make objective decisions on the land to produce better food. Cheat sheet. I like that. I'm going to use that. Instead of talking about fat, we need to talk about fat quality. We need to talk about the balance of omegas 6 and 3 that exist within the food. I'll come back to that. Protein quality. I am very sorry. Animal protein and plant-based protein are not the same thing. Total protein is not an accurate estimate of the quality of that food. We need to look at amino acid structures. Carbohydrates. The ratio of fiber to sugar and starch is very problematic in the foods that we are growing and producing today. Our food used to have a lot more fiber in it. Vitamins and minerals. We all talk about these deficiencies or imbalances of macros, but I really believe the hidden health, malnutrition is coming from a deficiency in micronutrients, wholeheartedly. And there's evidence to show that each one of us sitting in this tent is deficient in most micronutrients that are essential for your health, longevity, and well-being. The future is what we call phytochemicals. These are bioactive compounds within the plant that actually protect and heal the plant. So when the plant is actually thriving in an ecosystem, not being dumped with toxic chemicals, it's expressing itself through biochemical reactions that protect and defend itself. Those phytochemicals are the very foundation of nutrition in our body. And we don't talk about it. Nobody's studying, nobody's measuring. When's the last doctor who's talked to you about the phytochemicals in your diet? These guys play a very, very, very important role in how we're going to enable this regenerative transition. Carbon sequestering nutrient-dense meat is how we're going to get ourselves out of this problem. And it's fascinating because I came from London Climate Action Week last week and was here to speak. And it was incredible to see that people are still sitting on stage and telling everyone they have to be plant-based, that's the only way forward. Plants need to play a very important role in your diet. You need fruits and vegetables. You need whole nutrient-dense fruits and vegetables. I'm not going to dispel that myth. It's not a myth. But we need animal proteins that are regenerating our landscapes on the plate. And this is the reason for that. This is what happens below ground when we get plants in our ecosystems, animals on our ecosystems. And we get incredible results above and below ground in terms of what's coming off the land. You cannot compare the nutrient density per hectare of an animal protein system versus versus an annual grain system. So we set out with animal products first. We now do grains, fruits, and vegetables. We measure the nutritional quality of whole foods. Getting there, huh? What happens when you put conventional animal products into your body is you are throwing off the balance of omegas in your diet. We all understand the importance of fish. We all understand the importance and the success of Mediterranean type diets. It all boils down to the balance of omegas and the quality of fat that go into our bodies. When we load animals with grains, the same thing that we're talking about, you inflame their bodies and you throw off the fat quality, and that has the same impact in our body as a heaping bowl of grains. And so this concept of the omega balance is really important. It's how we're going to start really talking about the quality of animal protein. What you see is historically we've been eating ratios closer to 4-to-1, 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 1-to-1, versus ratios 10-to-1, 15-to-1, 20-to-1. The average American diet looks like 20-to-1. And the reason for why it's so inflammatory is those omega-6s and 3s are competing for the same biological mechanisms in our body. And it just gets overloaded. So this is root cause of inflammation, and this is why we see this across the board. I'll head towards wrap up here. We're losing diversity from our system. And diversity is the basis of nutrition because not only do we need more nutrient-dense foods, we need more nutrient-dense plates. And the quickest way out of this mess is actually how you structure the plate, how you structure the grocery store bag to ensure that you're getting the best diversity of foods. Because no one single type of food is going to fix your problems. There's no holy grail here. I'll close on this. This is what we're seeing in our lab. This is the science that we're really beginning to understand about what's happening due to regenerative practices on the nutritional quality of the food. Grab a screenshot, a picture if you'd like. I'm not going to go into it, but I will say micronutrients are increasing, phytonutrients are increasing, and the quality of the fat is improving. But how we've designed is really, how we've chosen genetics is really changing structures between protein and carbohydrate ratios in our key fruits and vegetables. And we can do this. There's no doubt in my mind that we are sitting at the beginning of a revolution to make food quality the basis of our decision-making from farm to fork. There is no doubt in my mind that we have all the information, the knowledge, the tools, and technology to get farmers compensated based on quality and not on quantity, to get them out of this continuous loop of commodity-driven agriculture where the steward of the land is a price taker for all the hard work that goes in. What we're doing is introducing competition back into the food system. We're going to reward the best producers who are actually producing the most nutritious food. And I'm sorry to get you all excited. We're in the US, we don't have a lab here. But yeah, follow us on the internet and we'll be here soon enough.
Thank you. Good to go. Thank you. My name's Matthew Adams. I'm co-founder director of a CIC called Growing Real Food for Nutrition, which was established in 2020. We're exploring how to grow, measure, and promote the benefits of nutrient-rich food. I'm starting with this picture because I'm sure you all know what it is. It's a potato. And it's expressing the whole nutritional quality of a potato. And it's the quote by von Goethe that I particularly want to mention, is that the whole is more than the sum total of its parts. This is holistic thinking, And to give you an example of that, I can point to this room. We're all individuals, but we can all have individual conversations. But together, when we all share that information, it creates something more than we can create on our own. Yeah? There's a substance in between that we're not thinking about. So Growing Real Food for Nutrition is a membership platform. We've been doing citizen science projects, and I'm moving towards now the idea of developing a food quality standard database. Our vision is to see an abundance of nutritious food grown in harmony with nature made available to everyone on the planet. It's the only thing that makes sense. And those are some examples of some of the citizen science projects that I've developed and run. Just a little bit about me. So I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, but in 1992 I switched careers to study environmental quality and resource management, and that got me into nature, soils, and a philosophy, a deep green philosophy called deep ecology, and that is what has inspired my direction today. And here is a picture expressing what deep ecology is all about. It's about questioning our current worldview, which is human-centric, in order to realize an alternative worldview, which is non-human-centric. So the picture I've got here shows the same plant, but grown in different ways. It's how we think about how we grow it. So on your... which side are you looking at? On the one side, we've got the... food quality equals wealth mentality. So here we've got the accountant replacing all the life in the soil, intravenous drip of NPK straight into the roots, and we're growing money off the trees. That's all we're doing. That's our definition of quality. And of course, associated with that is industrial pollution and large-scale ill health, and the loss of biodiversity and everything else is starting to collapse. So worldview is important because it guides the expectations of a society. We collectively think and share the same thinking. And broken down, it's a very brain-centered thinking. Human-centric is all about we are the most important species on the planet, and that's a brain-centered way of thinking. And so we begin to believe that the way the world works is mechanistic. That happened many hundreds of years ago. We just stripped the idea of life or a spiritual value in nature. We took that out, and that left us this impression of a machine. So the world is mechanistic thinking. Our science that we've developed to understand that machine's been very reductionist. My example of reductionist science is where you study the wheel nut of a car so intensely that you don't realize it's actually just come off, and then the wheel runs on down the road and the car crashes. But your knowledge about the wheel nut is still perfect. So values that come about from a human-centric worldview, competition. So we're all in competition with each other through economic competition. And our normal behavior every day is control. Now, when you get locked into this cycle, you teach your children that this is the way that the world works. And have you ever heard the expression trapped in the belly of the beast? That is, I believe, where a lot of us are today, including myself. And we're trying to solve problems using the same way of thinking that created the problems in the first place. So we need a shift. When you start to focus food quality as health, things begin to shift. I believe then if you start growing food for quality, you then start respecting soil, nature, and you begin cooperating with the whole of life. And that's our alternative picture, where we see the life in the soil being restored and food of higher quality coming, and then there is no industrial pollution. So just a brief overview, as a case study of the last 150 years, a focus on cheap food, which is our focus on food quality as wealth. So mid-1800s in the UK, we repealed the Corn Laws to create a market strategy to bring cheaper food available to the population of the UK. That policy got reinforced during the Great Depression, the Second World War, and then the advancement of industrialization and urbanization. Can't see everything. So the technology that followed that focus on yield are things like chemical agriculture, hybrid seeds, GM seeds, hydroponics, lab meat. These are all scientific, reductionist scientific thinking that is focused on yield. All these technologies are about increasing yield with no consideration for quality whatsoever. So what's happened to the environment as a result? We've lost biodiversity and we've lost key minerals in our diet, which is making us unhealthy. So the economic impact, in reality, it saved the average household income. It's gone from 33% that we used to spend on food to 11%. Yay, we're richer. That means we can go and spend more money on technology and other things that don't support nature. Farmers' real income, so I'm told by the Food and Farming Countryside Commission, has barely changed in the last 50 years. So who is benefiting? And then this little sum at the bottom is the annual spend on ill health, diet-related ill health, and the annual spend globally on repairing a damaged environment. And I've worked it out to be £5,500 per person. That's how much effectively we are having to pay to mitigate the problems of food quality as wealth. So if you take an average family of 4, that represents £22,000 a year. So clearly, a cheap food policy does not work. So this is some research into food quality. I began this journey when I was director of the Good Gardeners Association, promoting no-dig compost organic gardening. And I teamed up with the Biodynamic Association and an educational trust. And we tracked 23 minerals and trace minerals in the soil to the crops over 8 years. Every year we studied what was in the soil, what was in the crops. And we were generally asking the question, what is food quality and can it be measured? So what we're seeing in the graph at the top is the decline in minerals and trace minerals over 8 years in potatoes. We lost, in a biodynamically certified garden, more than half of the minerals and trace minerals. And when you look at the chemistry, the pH didn't change, and the NPK fertilizer index didn't change either. So those would not have told you that you were losing quality. But when you measure the biology in the soil, and we've got the fungi and bacteria ratios and the mycorrhizal colonization underneath that, you can begin to see this relationship between a loss of life and a loss of nutrition in the crops. Now, it's really hard to understand when you look at 23 minerals and trace minerals, what all those numbers mean. And the picture forming method on the right is expressing that in a picture. So you can see a very vibrant, healthy picture for the soil in 2004 and for the quality of the potatoes. And then you can see at the end, 2011, a very poor picture of the quality of soil and a very poor picture of the quality of potatoes. So another project that I was involved in a couple of years back in Andhra Pradesh, India. So there is the natural farming community. Today they are 1 million farmers practicing natural farming. And in Andhra Pradesh as a total, there are actually 6 million farms. They're about 2.5 acres on average. So 1 million are now practicing natural farming, 5 million are still doing chemical farming. And I've been exploring the use of a Brix refractometer that measures total dissolved solids in plant juice. So effectively, the thickness of the juice. And so I taught the teams how to do this, and they went out into the fields, and over 16 crops, everything naturally farmed had a higher Brix value than was chemically farmed. And then we went into taste testing sessions. Everything that had the higher Brix value was voted to have the higher taste. So this is a way of beginning to understand food quality and measuring it quite simply with a Brix refractometer and taste. So another project connected to, I guess, Eric, and America, and the development of the Bionutrient Institute's idea of a handheld spectrometer. So I imported that method to the UK and ran the project here. And what we begin to see is the variation of nutrients in food is off the scale. Calcium 3.2 to 48.1, the variation is massive. Antioxidants 0.1 to 18,745. It's a massive gap it's a massive variation of nutrients. But when you add all those nutrients up, now this is the idea of nutrient density, which I do question a little bit. When you add all those nutrients up, that's the sum you can then use to say how nutrient dense are your carrots, kale, or potatoes. So with wheat in the UK, this is what I found. The highest value was conventionally grown, and the lowest value was conventionally grown. And let's just look at kale. The highest value was organic, and the lowest value was organic. So this is beginning to show us that the labels that certify our food are not guaranteeing the quality that comes out of those systems. They're process standards, not quality standards. This is flagging up potential. How do you define nutrient density, or how do you define food quality, is an open question. And when you look at counting all the nutrients, the physical nutrients in the food, and create that as a score, then we can see, well, you probably can't explain, the graph at the bottom, the highest quality wheat was out of the global database, was a wheat seed owned by Syngenta called SY9668. And it knocked the socks off everything else that we tested. The graph above that is showing how UK crops were all much lower in nutrient density than US crops. And I question that. And what's happening, I feel, in the bigger sphere is that the World Health Organization has identified over 2 billion people are micronutrient deficient, suffering with deficiencies of iron, zinc, vitamin A, and folic acid. And the biofortification of foods is becoming a real thing, where it's breeding programs, genetically engineering programs, and they're thinking, okay, we're missing these nutrients, let's see if we can pump them back into the food. And what I think that's effectively going to do is put our food out of balance, and that won't even make it nutritious. So I think it's just a warning about the idea of nutrient density. It's slightly more than that, and we need to be careful of being hijacked by big business. So food quality for me is about an equilibrium, a balance. It's about symbiosis. And this picture shows how when you increase one mineral element, say copper, that affects 2 more mineral elements in a plant. And those 2, by turn, affect 2 more mineral elements. And so it goes on. So it's a complex story. And the plant is possibly the only organism that knows how to do that. Humans really don't have a clue. So if a plant can create this equilibrium, then that suggests that plant has a high quality and is probably related to symbiosis and the abundance of life supporting it. So a shift in thinking. I'm interested in developing a food quality standard based on health. We've had a food quality standard based on wealth. And the result of that has been the decline of the environment and human health. And the Sustainable Development Goals, which comes out of human-centric thinking, all 17 of them, are simply not working. I think we're on track. 12% of the Sustainable Development Goals have been achieved, and the rest is failing badly. So in the last few years, there's been what's called the Inner Development Goals. And there's a group connected into the United Nations now that are advocating it's us that needs to change internally to be able to think differently. And out of the back of that is the Conscious Food Systems Alliance, a United Nations development program, of which we're a member, advocating a conscious practice in agriculture. Here's a challenge. So the idea here is a switch in thinking, think differently, think health, and when you start to create high quality food, it begins to naturally repair human health and the environment. So to identify high quality food, at the moment, what I'm concentrating on is taste and Brix values to identify high and low quality. And my hypothesis is that we all have this innate ability to detect healthy, nutrient-rich food that creates ecosystem health. It's a sense, it's a skill that we have lost due to, I think, getting used to low-quality food, because we adapt really quickly as a human species, plus marketing. Those two things have suppressed... Oh, I've pressed the black button. There we go. So in order to bring around a change, I've been developing projects around taste. So back to India, I've now been engaged in a much larger project in Andhra Pradesh. It's a 3-step project. I'm beginning with taste testing and Brix values to identify high and low quality. That's a pilot project which I ran in March, and it was very successful. 10 out of 16 of the comparative taste testing sessions I ran, we got positive correlations between Brix and high value. You can see in the human graph that I've created in this classroom is showing how many children, plus their teachers, preferred sample B to everything else. That is what I'm calling high quality. And there's one plate there where nobody liked it at all. That's what I'm calling low quality, which also matches the Brix values. And just to round out, this is a life cycle analysis, economic analysis of the whole thing of natural farming. And we see that on natural farming farms, biodiversity has increased. Their net income has increased by 49%. They employ more labor, which is good for community building. Dietary diversity has improved. Their illness is 33% lower, and their social capital is much higher. And right down the bottom there, in last place, although important, yields have increased by 11%. So, thank you very much.
One of the questions that we constantly get asked is, why not just take a supplement? And I'm sure it's on your mind. Many of us take supplements in this room. So this idea of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts is this really interesting idea of the food matrix. And we need to start talking about whole foods as being this incredible biodelivery mechanism for all of these diverse compounds that are actually nourishing us. So David, why whole foods? Why are whole foods so much different than supplements?
Well, the thing is, it's which supplement, isn't it? So you'll start with vitamin B1 and another, and then magnesium, and your cupboards will fill with supplements. And the other point is the one of homeostasis. The yin and the yang say of magnesium and calcium. So you can't, if you take one supplement and you've forgotten to take the other, you're going to cause an imbalance. For years and years, I was giving vitamin D and calcium. I now see that as dreadful because that was driving calcium absorption because of the vitamin D, and I wasn't giving magnesium. So that then you're getting calcium actually precipitating out. That was a dangerous thing. So supplements, it's a worrying game. Are you cleverer than God? Are you gonna, how much will you spend? And the other thing I'd like to add is the idea of taste. It's so important, but there's something really, something you all have to know. So I keep sheep, and they will find the herbs they need. If you give them the chance, they can taste them. But my patients can't until they give up sugar. While you have sugar and junk food, your palate is corrupted. While you're having sweeteners, your palate is corrupted. Now I've been off all that for 12 years, I can taste the sugar in milk. I can taste the sugar in almonds. My enjoyment of vegetables has changed completely. I can particularly tell the different quality of fat in meat. So I now can eat, but to save myself, but I couldn't before. So I think it's the two thing. It's both, can you eat whole foods instead of supplements? Yes, but you also need to have your taste buds functioning correctly. My final interesting fact, I always thought we could taste 5 separate things, and a professor of nutrition added in magnesium. We can taste magnesium. Did you know that? No. We can taste, and so can cattle, because you need magnesium to keep yourself alive. So it's whole foods for me. It's how you do them, but you've got to look after your taste buds, because that's how you select the foods to eat. But don't think that sweeteners and sugar will help you.
One of the frameworks that I use when I speak to food companies and to doctors and practitioners is we got to get the crappy food out of the system. We got to get the toxicity out of the system as number 2. Then we need to think about the nutritional quality of the foods. But the 4th thing is actually really interesting, which is the gut. And I'll never forget, I was with Koen in the Netherlands maybe 3 years ago, and he did this beautiful visualization of flipping the soil microbiome into our gut, and he showed that transference. But we forget to realize that the microbiome of our gut is that nutrient delivery system that actually enables that nutrition to come into our bodies. And part of resetting the sugar is changing the gut composition, is changing the microbiome composition, so that we can send better signals up to the brain and up to the palate to tell us actually what we need inside of our bodies. And so just like we're all here to figure out how to listen to the plants, our own biochemical signatures are starting in our gut and sending them up to our brain and sending them up to our palates. And so we have to begin this process of listening and learning and decoding those signals so that we can make better decisions. And that's where I love the work that you're doing, because do we all have that inherent nutritional wisdom within us if we get the bad stuff out?
Yes. And we need to practice. So, I mean, I've been developing a schools project in Shropshire and watching children measure food quality and do comparative taste testing. It's early stages, but they're already engaged in those conversations, and they're able to discuss in class. This is like 7, 8-year-olds. Oh, that strawberry tasted really sweet, or that one was juicier, and they're beginning the conversation. Is really important. So it's all, I think that sense is there. It's just been suppressed. We need to remove the suppression. I'm aware that we're probably overshot a little bit, and we ought to go to Q&As before we're kicked out of the tent. So can we? Are there any questions that arise? So, thank you.
Topic of supplements and guts. What's your take on probiotics, prebiotics in supplement form?
Should let the doctor answer that question, but you have to add the good stuff back in. And so let's just take the soil to the gut parallel here. The question is that inherent biology, and are those species actually present? And if you bring that biology back to life, will you get the community of microorganisms that you need to succeed? And that is a question in our soils, and that's a question in our gut. I think it's a good thing to help direct and steer that journey as keystone species to say, hey, maybe this community of microorganisms will be a higher function for this outcome. But
don't believe that you can correct a sugary diet with probiotics. Stop the sugar first, please. Otherwise you're then buying the probiotics and you're buying the vitamins and the supplements. So many of my patients, when I look in their cupboards, you cannot believe what's in there, but they're still having loads of sugar. The ground is, please give up the sugar first. You will taste food differently, and then you stand a better chance.
It's quite obvious to me as well that the nutrition in our food has jumped into a bottle onto the shelf. Any more questions? Can I take a front row question?
I'd like to ask the doctor, or it's more of a statement in some ways, but I've had a miracle of controlling arthritis and losing. Oh yeah, I'd like people to hear. I've had a miracle of losing weight and controlling arthritis. Could that possibly be because I've changed my diet and got rid of the sugar? There you go.
So, in my practice, I don't know where it ends, the benefits of a better diet. I've got loads of people who've come to me and they're too heavy for a knee replacement. I get them on a proper diet and then they don't need the knee replacement because their joints don't hurt. Exactly. Inflammation, we were talking about inflammation and the omega-6, omega-3 ratio. Why are we ill? Why are we in pain? And if you get your diet right, I've got countless people whose joints have improved, and then they come off the painkillers and the drugs they need for the side effects of the painkillers, and thus it goes on.
I've lost 4 stone in 3 years without being hungry. I have not been hungry. I've not rationed. I've just rationed.
And that is a perfect segue into come back tonight at 5:30. I'm back in here. This gentleman says he's not hungry on a good diet, and later on we'll be debating the fat jabs. That's another way to not get hungry, but I wonder which is the best way.
GLP-1s, fat jabs. Yeah.
Any more questions? Right, so can I go fourth row back? Yes, with the glasses. There it is.
Thank you. A question for Dr. David again. I work in community and I spend a lot of time talking about or showcasing different ways of doing food. How do we in the community get to meet the right GPs and build this connection? Because that seems to be quite a tricky thing, build these relationships.
Yeah, so how to convince doctors that nutrition matters. That's a really difficult one. That's a really... Oh, yes. There's a charity that I helped set up called the Public Health Collaboration. We have volunteers all over the country, 200 volunteers working with doctors. The Public Health Collaboration, the PHC, that's the answer. And we have international conferences in London every year talking about nutrition and medicine. Thank you, Jen, my wife. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. It's been absolutely incredible. Please come find us if you have any more questions or want to continue the dialogue. Start to ask questions, and you're gonna peel back the onion and really find that there's a wealth of knowledge about the nutritional quality of our foods hiding in plain sight.
Thank you.
Thank you.